Welcome back to Tabletop Glory. My name is Graham Johnson, and today we're going to be taking another look at the the Game Master set. Now, if you're not familiar with the Game Master set, I did do some sponsored content over on TikTok. However, today's video is of my own fruition. I like the miniatures that come in this box set. I think they're great for people who are learning how to paint. They're all out in the open. Their arms aren't like crossed over their chest or anything in a weird way that makes it hard to paint. This is really great for people that are learning to do miniature painting. So if you're into D&D, I highly recommend you consider this as one of your options for getting into miniature painting. Now, that having been said, if you've been following this channel for any serious amount of time, or you've been following me over on TikTok and watching my live streams, you will know that I have had some bad first experiences with Army Painter. That having been said, I did enjoy the process of just using that box set for the most part. You can go check out the video on my channel here about my first experiences with that. There were some things that I didn't like, but overall I really enjoyed the whole process, and that is definitely a box that you guys should consider checking out if you're new to miniature painting and you're looking for like an all-in-one inclusive kit. Now, that having been said, I did not paint all of the miniatures that came in that box set, and technically I still have 2 more left to go. But that having been said, we're gonna go ahead and take a look at this one. Now, I wanted to paint up the archer because I wanted them to kind of be able to fill the role of either like a druid or a ranger or a hunter or like whatever the equivalent of that sort of thing in an RPG game would be. I play a wide variety of tabletop RPGs, and it's nice to be able to have things that you can kind of intermingle and use for whatever you need. So in any case, let's crack into this miniature and see how I painted it. So I knew for this miniature I didn't want to do an over-the-top paint scheme. I haven't done anything over-the-top for any of the other miniatures that came with this box set, but I wanted to do something that would be easy to replicate for anybody else who picks up this box set themselves and wants to do something similar at home. Now, that having been said, I did want to try something new that I hadn't tried before, and that's I wanted to make the cloak look like it was made of fur. Now, I don't think I pushed the highlights quite far enough, and I also think that I should have been using a much sharper brush to get much finer detail, but at the end of the day, I think it looks just fine for what it is. I think if I had succeeded in getting the level of detail that I wanted, this would have pushed the miniature out of the tabletop to tabletop plus standard that I wanted to shoot for, and I would have had to have put in a lot more work to have made everything look coherent, I guess is the right word I want to use here. In any case, I knew that a lot of the leather was going to end up in a dark brown color with mild brighter highlights, and what I mean by that is I only went like 1 or 2 steps above the original base color for anything that got painted leather. I didn't want to do anything that was too bright. I wanted this to look well worn, but I didn't want it to look as though it had gone through a war, so to speak. I wanted it to look as though it had been well maintained, but it had been around for a long time. I feel like a druid or a hunter or any kind of a nature-based character, their equipment is going to not necessarily be dirty, but it's going to be dark in its colors to help blend in with the environment, but it's also going to be well worn and well maintained. So I didn't want tons of like little scratches and stuff like what I would typically do with leather, but I did want darker colors, and I did want it to look well worn. So hopefully that came across in the final paint scheme. I think it did, but I'll leave that up to you guys to decide for yourself. My initial thought is I wanted a fair amount of green, and I ended up adding some green in with the more tan colors by using a really soft but vibrant green color to kind of do all of my linens in. So initially when I was painting the pants, I thought maybe a green dyed leather. So I started out with a much brighter color with plans of darkening it. And I ended up deciding that I wanted to add some patterns onto the pants, which inevitably evolved into them being more of a brown color with green accents. So that's why you can see me here painting the pants green, but that ends up getting covered up pretty early on. Now, I typically don't tend to talk about the colors that I'm using very often anymore, because I feel like by telling you the name of the color, it encourages you to just use that, as opposed to the closest thing that you might have, or encouraging you to mix colors to get something close to it. But in this case, I'm using Ogre Camo, but I'm thinning it out quite a bit so that the white base coat does a really great job at making Ogre Camo look like this greenish, kind of very light fabric color. And I think it works really, really nice on this miniature.
Today's video is proudly sponsored by an out-of-focused iPhone camera.
Jokes aside, guys, I've been wanting to talk about this for a little bit, so bear with me for a hot second. I'm really sorry that sometimes shots are out of focus, and it seems like in older videos that never happened, but there's a really good reason for it. So back in the day, I used to record with my phone basically right in front of me, and this was so that I had the best view of the miniature, but so that you guys had the closest view to what I was seeing. As you can see, I oftentimes would bump the phone both with the paintbrush and my nose. So then I move the camera up next to my head so that it's got a similar view to what I'm looking at, but now I have no idea if things are in focus or not. They may start in focus, but then I notice halfway through the shot they're not, and I have to fix it. And I have no idea what I'm doing with my hands that's causing the autofocus to stop looking at what's in my hand and to start focusing on some random object on my desktop. So why is this such a problem for me and it doesn't seem to be an issue for a lot of other content creators? Well, the reality is that a lot of other content creators probably move away from their phone as soon as possible. And they get a nice either DSLR, digital single reflex lens, or they go ahead and get some kind of a camcorder with an HDMI output that they can then basically use as a really high-tech web camera to be able to record everything they're doing. And you're probably saying, well, this webcam that you're using right now looks really nice. Why don't you use that for recording? This webcam does not work from any closer than what it's sitting to me right now. If I attempt to use it to record something that is in my hands, and I have it mounted to something so that it is an okay distance away, my hands just won't be in focus. There is something about its facial detection, and it's the same thing with the phone, where it's looking for facial detection, where if it can't find a face, it finds something else to focus on, and then the footage is completely out of focus. There are probably some tips and tricks buried out there on the internet that could help me solve this problem. I have tried quite a few, including putting a magnet on the back side of my phone to disable the autofocus, which is really bad for your phone. And even then, that didn't work for me. Now, there are a few other content creators that are out there using their cell phones to create content, and I've been told by a few of them that whenever they notice something's out of focus, they just repaint over the miniature and film it a second time. I don't have hours upon hours upon hours to repaint the same thing over and over and over again just to get a good shot of it. And honestly, it's turned into one of the many reasons why I'm not pumping out super high quality miniatures anymore. If you go back and look at some of my older stuff like my iTyrant, that was a really nice paint job, and I don't do stuff like that anymore because it's discouraging for me to have to sit here and then suddenly realize that a third of my footage is unusable. I don't know. At some point, I'm probably going to figure things out and it'll be just fine. But for now, I thought I at least owed you guys some kind of an explanation as to why it seems like sometimes things are wildly out of focus, and then other times things get done in the miniature that I don't talk about. And it's simply because the footage that I recorded while I was painting it is completely unusable. And I'm really sorry about that.
Getting back into this miniature, I knew that I wanted the cape to kind of have a fur-like effect to it. Initially, I thought maybe I would end up doing some freehand on this cape as well, as I really wanted some kind of pattern on it since it's just a nice big open flat shape. However, I quickly realized that despite having seen a few different videos of people doing this kind of technique, I'd never really heard anybody explain it. So I was just kind of figuring things out on my own. Now, I felt like if I started out with some brighter colors to kind of lay out where I wanted my highlights to be, and then go back in, lay in my midtones, and then reaffirm my highlights by putting them in last, that might be the best way to do this. And you'll see that I'm kind of doing a bit of a scratchy kind of a pattern or a texture to this cloak by doing a bunch of really sharp lines over and over again. This is very similar to how I do my wood grain, which kind of also resulted in some muscle memory from that kicking in, and things not really working quite how I'd hoped they would. Now, if you guys have any feedback on this, whether you think that I did a good job for a first attempt, or if you think that I could have made some improvements, I'm all ears to constructive criticism. I was really trying to find some YouTube tutorials out there just to kind of get myself in the right ballpark. And the YouTube algorithm, I guess the way I was typing this in, it kept thinking that I was looking for freehand videos on how to do freehand details as opposed to painting fur by hand. So if you know of anybody out there that's done some tutorials on how to do a fur-like texture on a miniature, I would absolutely love to go and check out that video, because no matter what combination of words I used, I either found tutorials on how to paint fur that was already a sculpted texture on the miniature, or I found how to paint freehand detail. I never figured out or found a tutorial on how to paint fur in a freehand style. So the YouTube algorithm kind of did me dirty there, but I think it turned out all right. I think it turned out all right. You'll notice that I'm kind of doing the texture on the inside of the cloak as well. I end up not liking that, and I just kind of painted this generic tan color on the inside so that it's a single layer cloak. Let me know if you think that was a good idea, because I'm still not 100% sold on that. I'm not sure if I like the fact that it's got that leathery tan color on the inside with the fur on the outside, but you guys be the judge. Let me know if you think I made the right call there. Now, I really dropped the ball here. I thought I hit record when I was working on like the leather breastplate as well as the undershirt, and I didn't. And then I hit record when I thought I was hitting stop record, recorded myself mixing my paints for painting her hair, and then stopped the recording when I thought I was recording, and noticed when I was done painting the hair. I'm really sorry about that. That was a huge drop of the ball, because I did a fair amount more work than simply painting it a generic color. With the leather tunic, it appears to be made of a bunch of straps, so I wanted the crevices to be nice and dark, and I painted that with a nice dark color, and then I stippled in my brighter highlight color, avoiding the deepest recesses, and then I edge highlighted with that same color just to make sure that the raised edge was a nice solid color and not a stippled edge. If you look at the miniature up really close, it gives this really beautiful worn leather look. From far away, it just reads as that XV88 leather tan color a lot of people tend to use. But yeah, I'm really sorry about that, guys. As for her hair is actually quite straightforward. I started with a white base coat. Now you could start with any kind of a linen. Now her hair is quite straightforward. You could start with a linen color. I just started out with the white base coat that I already had on it, and I'm mixing a little bit of yellow into Seraphim Sepia, just the tiniest little amount. If you want to skip that stage but you want it to be more of a natural blonde color, what you can actually do is you can take Reichland Flesh Shade and do the hair that way first, and then put Seraphim Sepia over top of it, and it creates a much darker blonde. I wanted more of a fantasy feel, so I went ahead and left it nice and bright, and then accented it with a little bit of yellow. Now, that also having been said, this is also when I decided to paint the skin tone purple. Demonette Hide purple. No highlights or any kind of shadows or shading, because there's so little of her skin. I decided that it didn't need it. But again, footage was lost because I didn't double check that I hit record. really sorry about that. I kept things nice and simple with the bow. I did an all-over naturey green color, and then all of the little embossments that are on it, I went ahead and painted that with XV88, which is our leather brown color. I thought this would do a good job at just kind of selling the illusion that this is a wooden bow of simple but high-quality make. Nothing too fancy for a ranger or a druid, but something that is strong and robust that will last. Now, for all of the metal that I was going to be painting on this miniature, I knew I wanted to incorporate green into it, which worked out great because Vallejo's metal color gold actually tends to have a lot of green in it. It's a really great highlight color for gold because you don't oftentimes see the green in it when it's accompanied by other gold colors. It gives more of almost like a silvery type of gold, a white gold type appearance, but when you paint it on its own, its green kind of really comes out and is a bit more apparent. And I also feel like this is a really great base color to kind of paint Nordic gold. If you guys know what Nordic gold is, it tends to not have the exact same sheen that traditional gold has, and the colors that are in it are kind of unique. So if you're interested in doing a Nordic gold finish for some of your miniatures, I highly recommend Vallejo Metal Color Gold for that. And there we have it, our final miniature complete. Now again, was shooting for like a tabletop-ish standard and wanted to add a little extra flair to it. I think I accomplished that. Yeah, there are a few spots where the paint scheme isn't perfect or great, but it is what it is. It's meant to be a simple paint scheme. It's meant to be a straightforward paint scheme. It's not meant to win any competitions. It is meant to be something simple that everyone at home can achieve with just a little bit of patience. Hopefully you guys really liked this miniature, and if you want to see something a little bit more complicated, there are plenty of other videos on this channel. Maybe consider checking out my video where I talk about non-metallic metals. I've done one for both silver and gold, which is a big challenge for me as a colorblind artist, but ultimately I think I learned a lot in those challenges. In any case, thank you guys so much for joining me today. And as always, may your display case always be filled and your pile of shame never run empty. Until next time.